Hey, KK, you wrote
Hi,
a,
Dr. Mike.
it's good to see you back.
Good to see
Uh,
you.
and you wrote a wonderful book called Skinny Liver, which talks about how to keep your liver healthy, right?
That's correct.
What's the subtitle of Skinny Liver?
The subtitle, what you mean, like the title
Is,
underneath?
yeah, is there a subtitle, Kristen?
There
This
is.
is Kristen Kirkpatrick, who wrote this book, Skinny Liver, which concentrates on how to make your liver healthy, and I'm not sure there's a subtitle.
No, there is. There's a subtitle, but I'm blanking on it right now.
Well, this is a story. One of the top stories of the week is on liver cancer deaths are increasing not by a little, but by a lot over the
By a
last
lot.
16 years in young adults in the U.S. Is that right?
That's correct. A huge percentage here. So we saw a 65% increase in cirrhosis, which then obviously cirrhosis is when you have complete irreversible damage to the liver. That's when, if you don't get a liver transplant, unfortunately, death is pretty imminent. So this was a huge increase, and one of the things that they had
A
assumed...
65% increase in cirrhosis, and a lot of that leads to liver cancer. Is that right?
That's right, and it amounted to about a 10% increase per year, Dr. Roizen. One of the reasons that they are
10% per year, compounded annually?
10% rise
Whoa!
every year in
You
people.
can't go very long without everybody dying from that.
That's true. And so one of the things, obviously, my book was really about obesity and looking at NAFLD. This was looking in this study more at
NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is the cirrhosis, the liver disease and subsequent cirrhosis you get from too much fat in your liver, which really is from weight gain. I got
That's
to worry
correct.
about Daryl because it looks to me like he's gaining weight back again. He lost all this weight. Now he's gaining some of it back. We need you here to help him.
Well, this study looked really specifically at alcohol consumption, which is a little bit of a different risk factor for the liver. And just looking at, you had mentioned, Dr. Roizen, that this was in young people. So this was in people looking in their 20s, their early 30s, and really looking at how excessive drinking has really kind of taken over. So looking at people that are drinking every single day, having excessive amounts, it's a little bit of a difference in what we'd seen before. And we think that that's what's one of the things that's attributing to this very steep rise.
And that started with the recession and the job layoffs in 2008-9. So
Correct.
that stress, TV and alcohol are the two major ways we deal poorly with stress, but that led to this, they think.
Yeah, so really alarming. Again, what's the takeaway on this one is to, number one, if you do feel you have an alcohol problem, to get help. This could really be very damaging to your health. It could kill you, as we're seeing here with these increases. And to really just kind of focus on looking at your own drinking habits and taking a step back and looking at, am I having too much, even if you're not considered a full-blown alcoholic?
It's one of the things when you go camping in the woods, you tend to drink at night. So you got to make sure you go sober when you get back and only have maybe one drink a night. 0.5 to 1 for women, 1 to 2 for men is where your risk of any problem is best. Maybe it's best to, if you overdo it for a couple of weekends, maybe it's best to go light when you get back. At least that's my philosophy.
So it's about sex, one of your favorite topics, Dr. Mike. And it's not surprisingly, it shows that when you have sex, you feel better the next day. What's some of the mechanisms behind this? I can assume, but you read the study. What do you think?
You're smiling an awful lot, KK, on this study. But it turns out, this is an interesting study. They looked at about 200 college students and had them do their logs of how they felt and what activities they had, food, etc. And what they found was if they had sex, the next day they felt an increased self-worth. by sex, they define that as intimate relations of either sexual relations or heavy kissing. So it wasn't necessarily orgasmic sex, but it was this feeling of you felt like by giving yourself to someone and someone giving yourself to them, you felt more worthy the next day and happier the next day. Yet the converse wasn't true. That is, if you felt happier, you didn't necessarily have more sex that night. So it was that sex led to happiness, feeling that you were a more worthy human being. It relates to we all want respect and we want that feeling of being part of a group, part of a social group, and I suppose there's nothing more better from a standpoint of nothing higher in quality of a association with another human being than giving yourself to them and them giving themselves to you. KK, cauliflower, kale, and carrots. What do they have in common for your health?
So this was a great study. Now, we all know that having more fruits and vegetables helps with lowering the risk of all cancers. This one in particular looked at individuals that had 5.5 or more servings per day. People that did consume this much looked at a 11% decrease in prostate and breast cancer.
So decrease in prostate and breast cancer for more fruits and vegetables. And were they specifically kale, cauliflower, and carrots, or what did those have in addition?
Well, they actually looked at a lot of different fruits and vegetables. The greatest benefits were in these particular ones that we just mentioned. But the study did go on to talk about how really any cruciferous vegetable, any yellow vegetable, any orange vegetable, they went into details about this, about how those could also lower the risk of breast and prostate cancer.
So yellow, orange, and crucifers. So like winter, what is it called? Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, arugula. I'm missing the one that starts with a W. But anyway, those of the cruciferous all decreased both breast and prostate cancer risk.
That's right. That's right. The largest decreases were, of course, with the ones that we had just looked at, the cauliflower, the kale, carrots, etc. But I think the takeaway for me in trying to counsel some of my patients is to try and get as many cruciferous vegetables in as possible, to try and get as many orange and yellow fruits and vegetables, to really get a variety of color. We know that in addition to breast and prostate, it's going to help to lower the risk of many cancers, as it will for other diseases, and strengthen the brain. So there's a lot of benefits to look at this. This just happens to be one that is very meaningful to a lot of people.
Good. Well, I'm as my usual broccoli for lunch process continues. I probably have broccoli for lunch 5 days a week, so hopefully prostate and breast cancer won't come my way.
All right, so this has a lot to do with women getting pregnant, what that means for dementia, for Alzheimer's, and I'm really interested in this connection as a woman. So, Dr. Mike, what do you have about this? Is having a protect you or not?
Well, this was interesting. There are 3 studies on Alzheimer's disease that pertain to women and pregnancy. One is on depression, that if you get pregnant, the risk of third trimester and postpartum depression over the last 10 years has increased from 17%. I didn't even realize it was that large. 1 in 6 women gets seriously depressed in the immediate postpartum period, to 1 in 4, up to 25%. So a major increase. We don't know why that is. Obviously, there are a lot of hormonal changes with pregnancy. It was related to the fact that, there have been some studies that when you're pregnant, you give a lot of the brain fat, the structural fat in your brain, DHA, to your baby, and maybe you could prevent it with more of the DHA omega-3 fats. That hasn't proven in intervention studies to be true, except in some small segments, meaning it's not true for the whole population. So you want to have more DHA, but in addition, you want to make sure that if you are going through this, you seek help, because it is a serious problem. The second one was an interesting one. Women who had up to 5 children had a decreased risk by about 50% in Alzheimer's disease compared to women who had none. On the other hand, if you had more than 5 children, you doubled your risk of Alzheimer's disease. I can see that pretty easily because the stress of all those kids running around would cause me a lot of stress. Anyway, even as the dad in the family, you got 5, 6 kids running around, you're in real stress. At least we don't have. We have got a decreased fertility rate in America. We got a real problem. I heard your kids in the background a few seconds ago. So thank you for raising 2 of them. That's what we did, but we need to have a 1.4 more between us in order
That's right.
to keep society at the same level, and more than that if we're going to grow society. But the interesting thing was, no one knows why, but more than 5 children, doubling your risk of Alzheimer's disease, 1 to 5 having your risk. The other thing that was interesting in the Alzheimer's study is that lowering your blood pressure, keeping your blood pressure at 120 over 80 or less, was associated with about a 25% decrease in Alzheimer's risk and dementia risk compared to 140 over 85. So the guidelines of lowering your blood pressure, not just preventing heart attacks and strokes, but preventing dementia as well. So talk to your doc about where your blood pressure control should be and know your blood pressure values. I'm going to tell Daryl that's especially important for him because it is African American men are most at risk for the side effects of high blood pressure. It seems to be a much worse disease in that population. Okay, KK, the next story is what are the best oils for our health? So this was a story about 10 oils.
Yeah. This is a really interesting one because, as you know, Dr. Royce, and you and I deal with this all the time. There's great debate over things like coconut and what should be used and where should you source your olive oil, things that we talk about on a regular basis. So number one, the first point that they made in this article, which I think is probably one of the best points, is to look at how you're cooking. So that's the first thing, right? Look at what the smoke point is of certain oils. Olive oil tends to be one of the best oils, but it has a lower smoke point.
And that lower smoke point, what does that mean from a standpoint of, does that mean the oil goes bad if you cook above that?
Well, if you cook above it, not only will it degrade the oil a little bit, but it will also turn healthy oils into unhealthy oils.
So you
really
want to cook below the smoke point. Extra virgin olive oil has a low smoke point, so you can saute with it, but at a lower temperature. That's what you're telling me?
At a lower temperature, that's right. So that's probably, if we're going to look at all of these and say what's the best of the best, I would say that is probably the conclusion that they came to in this article, and then looking at the sourcing of it. So looking at olive oils from California, for example, tend to be very good. They mentioned that some of the extra virgin olive oils are not actually extra virgin. So again, trying to get the purest source of olive oil would be ideal. They also covered coconut oil, which has that higher smoke point, and whether or not it's this miracle oil that we've all been searching for. So again, I think jury is still out. I know you've presented on multiple times some data in animals that looked at some of the negative aspects of regular coconut oil consumption. So I think the bottom line for that one is just if you want to use it, don't go crazy with it. Use it sparingly. And even with that high smoke point, you don't want to go and fry things because, again, that's not the best option. What is a better option, perhaps, with a higher smoke point would be avocado oil. That is one that they did cover as well.
So avocado oil was one with a high smoke point, was a little expensive, but was really a healthy oil.
Really a healthy oil. oil. So just that's another option to look at for cooking. Vegetable oils, people are a little bit wary of vegetable oils. Sometimes there's combinations in there that you're not quite aware of. Again, they said to just try and go for higher quality. For my preference, I usually tell my patients, if you're going to go with a vegetable type oil, to just stick with canola, expeller pressed, organic, the highest quality you can get when you're cooking with those oils. I'm more prone to the olive oil than anything else, but I know people want choices. And then looking at some other options, so they looked at, for example, sesame oil, which again adds a lot of flavor for a very small amount. So that's another great one to use. Looking at some oils that really are not traditional for cooking, like flaxseed oil, that would be another one that's, perhaps that's a great oil to have, but you wouldn't necessarily cook with it. So great article. I think bottom line here again is not to cook at very high heats. If you're going to do it every once in a while, avocado oil might be the best option. But if we're looking at the pie in the sky, I think it's still pointing all the way towards olive oil.
I want you to know that is a long review article that you showed just how great your memory is. No Alzheimer's disease or dementia there, because she remembered all of it. Now, we have a special oil that's in our wellness shop, and I guess you can probably order it online, but the oil that I really like that's in our wellness shop is a combination of extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil. That would seem it blends very well, and it has a great taste. Higher smoke point in the combination, I assume. Have you ever cooked with that?
I have. I actually have it here in my house.
And it has a higher smoke point, is that right?
Yeah, it has a higher smoke point, so if you're looking to perhaps brown things a little bit more, that you need to get a little bit more heat, it works really well, and it's a very high-quality oil. So I really love the company that provides it to us, and I recommend it to my patients actually all the time.
So that's one more of the great stories this week. Don't go away, because we have one more for you.
You're asking me.
You asked me. It's about vacant lots.
Sorry, I already went to the second week. Sorry. Vacant lots. Here we go. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Clap again. Dr. Mike, I know you were saying earlier that you had a favorite story this week. I think this is it. So it looks at vacant lots and turning them into something spectacular. Yeah,
well, I actually have a personal interest in this because I didn't know what was going on in Philadelphia, but my son and daughter-in-law and their grandchild, my grandchild, their grandchild, is in Philadelphia. So I visited, and there was a vacant lot next to them that got converted into a garden. Not just cleaned up, but totally converted into a garden. And I was wondering what was going on. Was Philadelphia doing this? And it turns out this was a study. Who knew? They took 110 vacant lots in Philadelphia. A third of them they cleaned up and turned into gardens. A third of them they just cleaned up, and a third of them they left as vacant lots. And it turned out they then examined the mental health of about 150 people, 50 each, who visited them. And it turned out the mental health of those that turned into gardens, which is what happened near my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchild's vacant lot, had the best mental health, less depression, higher feelings of happiness, higher feelings of self-worth again. So maybe the goal is turn your city's vacant lots, campaign to do it, into gardens. Philadelphia is now doing that with 447 every other of their vacant lots that they can find. And I can tell you they probably will sell them because land is pretty special in Center City, Philadelphia. But they're turning all the vacant lots into gardens. Great idea for our mental health.